Host, reporter, producer, studio analyst, and color commentator, and podcaster.
That's it?
So he's also a champion, former champion for North Texas Mean Green as a soccer player.
Okay.
And you can find her on Twitter @_ Hailey Sutton, the newest member of DallasCowboys.com, Hailey Sutton. Hailey, good evening.
Hey, yeah, I didn't realize you were going to read my whole resume. I might have added a few more things on there.
Oh, at any given time, we as a show, we're very pro
Yes.
talking your talk. So if at any point you want to just throw out some accolades, please do.
Well, she should have said, like, hey, Kevin, you forgot the fact that I'm an Emmy winner as well. Ooh. So there's also that. So
That part, yeah. But no, I'm kidding. Thanks for having me, guys.
Well, let's talk about this Cowboys team getting ready to take on the Jacksonville Jaguars, coming off of a very interesting win, I would say, against the Houston Texans. What is your sense that you've gotten around this team about what they were able to accomplish on Sunday, but ultimately now trying to turn the page as they get ready for Jacksonville on Sunday?
Yeah, I think the vibe is, we as media members were kind of the ones that were surprised that the game came down to the wire, not so much the players. I think I was really impressed going into the game all week at how laser focused they were in staying focused. And I thought that was impressive. And while I think every single one of us at DallasCowboys.com expected this one to be a blowout, I am not surprised, I guess, or it doesn't catch me off guard that it did come down to the wire. I think the Texans are just one of those teams where, they didn't really have a lot to lose. It's technically considered a rivalry, and, everybody plays this team, especially this year, with everything they had. So I think that the guys did a really good job, and they'll tell you it wasn't the best game, but they got it done. And as Mike McCarthy says over and over and over, it's hard to win games in this league. It doesn't matter what your record is or how well you've been playing in the last couple of years, last couple of games, it doesn't matter. So I think they walked away with a sense of knowing that those tough games are going to come later on, specifically in the playoffs. And so it was good to have one out of the way, especially, what we know at stake next week with the Eagles game, but they're also not overlooking the Jaguars this week too. So I think they feel really good about what they did. They know that there's some things that need to be cleaned up, but ultimately, guys, it's a 4-game winning streak, and that's something that not a lot of teams in the league have done. So I think they feel really good.
So within that, 4-game winning streak and getting things done, I think Dak Prescott today led on that he has a little bit more frustration than he shows outwardly to us, and I found that interesting. Did you have any particular takeaway from that revelation about Dak Prescott today?
I actually was more surprised after the game on Sunday when it was brought to his attention that he's thrown 9 interceptions through 8 games and that he wasn't aware at the number of interceptions he's thrown. I think for him, it was one of those things where he knew they were happening and he knew that it was something that, for whatever reason, he talked about it being a timing issue. He's talked about it being he's an aggressive style quarterback, and so that plays into it as well. But I think his reaction to hearing that number really put things into perspective. And so I think you saw that frustration lead into today's conversation because I think it's something that he's not used to. The last time he had this volume of interceptions was way earlier in his career where I think he had 13 in one season. And other than that, he's been pretty clean when it comes to taking care of the football. So I think it was just a frustrating moment for him because he knows what he's capable of. He knows these interceptions aren't all on him, but at the end of the day, he's the one making the decisions to make the throw. And so I think he puts a lot of it on himself. But I like that out of Dak. For a guy who has gotten so much flack year in and year out for, 1 minute he's the guy, the next minute he's not the guy. I imagine that weighs on him more than he leads on to be. So to hear him be fired up about something that's continuing to happen and knowing how much he wants to fix that to be better for both himself and this team, I think that's a really important quality that your quarterback needs to have. And it's good that he's having that recognition right now.
Hailey, the word that this team has used throughout the course of the year is the word resiliency. How would you define what you have seen through this team as they get ready to play their last 4 games of this season?
Oh, I love that question. So actually, I'm doing an entire feature piece on that word resiliency for our pregame show on Sunday. So a little shameless plug there. Make sure you tune in. I've got some really good stuff from a couple of the guys, but I just don't think you are pressed to find a team that has been through as much as this team has been through this season. I mean, starts right off the top. You lose your starting quarterback. And we've said this time and time again, it's no disrespect to Cooper Rush. I'm sure this franchise is so incredibly thankful that he was able to come in and sustain the way he did, and that's something that he will always have done. But the reality is when you look at what this team has done with Dak Prescott since returning, it has been remarkable. So you start with losing your starting quarterback, and even before that at training camp, it goes back to Tyron Smith. So you lose your literal veteran presence on that offensive line that's pretty full of new faces. Then you lose your quarterback. And then down the line, your cornerbacks room is depleted. You've had guys here and there who have been in and out. I mean, it's just from an injury perspective, this team, the way that they have just been able to shift and adjust on the fly. This rookie class to me is unbelievable. I know Dak told us a couple of weeks ago that he's never seen a rookie class as impressive as this class is. And every single week you're seeing a different guy making an impact. And not that nobody thought that they were capable of that, but when you think of the word resilience, like, to me, that's it. Resilience is, seeing that there's an issue and finding a way to fix it as quickly as possible. And that's what they've done. And then you look at the way that the front office and the coaching staff has handled this. I mean, hats off to Jerry for the last month. The circus that has been OBJ, that is still allegedly a possibility. But to handle that and go out and say, you know what, we still need a fix for this. We're going to go out and get T.Y. Hilton in the building, a veteran guy who has proven himself and his worth in this league, and I think will be a benefit to this team down the stretch. I mean, it's just up and down the board. It doesn't matter how you look at that word resilience. This team has really leaned into that. And I asked Mike McCarthy about that earlier this week. I said, you obviously could not have predicted this year. What made you choose that word? And he talked about, it's all based in the off season and what he saw from the off season and just the way guys were stepping up during training camp and how, everybody was so locked in and so dialed in to being committed to that goal of a Super Bowl. I just think it's really incredible how well that theme has fit, but also how well these guys have bought into that word and applied it every week in a different way.
So, Hailey, going further on the topic of resilience, they're going to have to prove it yet again, as Terrence Steele has been lost for the season here, and he has been very good for this football team. Now they're put in a place where Josh Ball had to step in and then ultimately had to be replaced by Jason Peters. You've got Tyron Smith coming back. What do you make of this entire situation and how they go forward and how they handle all of this?
Yeah, I definitely do not envy the coaching staff in this one because it's so tricky. And the girls were talking on the podcast today, our Girls Talk Boys Talk podcast, how much of a luxury it is to have veteran guys who can step in and, like a Jason Peters, who, and he even told us in that game against Houston, he was watching that last 2 minutes unfold. And before Coach Philbin could even come over and tell him he was going in the game, he was already planning on making himself available to help. So to your point of how does this resiliency continue, that's a recent example of it. But I just think it's going to come down to, at this point of the season, everybody's banged up. Every team right now is trying to figure out how they can have these solutions to get them through to the playoffs or get them a spot in the playoffs. The Cowboys have the really, really unique challenge of having a lot of talent. I mean, you have 3 future Hall of Famers on that offensive line. And while you don't necessarily want a guy like Jason Peters, who's used to playing in one place but can play in another place, you've got a Tyron Smith who's used to playing one place, while you don't necessarily want to take them out of their comfort zone, what a luxury it is to be able to have guys on that line who can say, hey, Tyler Smith, I know we've really, really, really liked you over at that left tackle position. You've been playing that all season. We're going to keep you there, and we're going to shift everybody else around, at least for this week, and see how it plays out. I think that that's a luxury for this team to have. Now, ultimately, those are decisions that are going to have to be made, mid-game. Maybe it's working for the first half. Maybe it's not. Maybe you're making adjustments on the fly. But just to be able to have the options to mix different guys in and see where they fit, I think right now this is a time to do it. It's very similar to me last week with the cornerback situation where you had Anthony Brown lost with that Achilles injury, and so you were mixing in guys like Kelvin Joseph into that cornerback spot to see who fits where. I think this is a very similar game in which you can work different guys in there and see who's going to be best where for the long term.
Hailey Sutton of DallasCowboys.com joining us on the Get Right with Reggie KG on your home with the Cowboys. 105 through the fan. So before we let you get out of here, Hailey, we're going to have some fun. Obviously,
I
over
love
at
fun.
DallasCowboys.com, and you're working with the likes of Patrick Walker and Mickey Spagnola, Nick Eatman, and others. You don't have to say it out loud, but we love if you would. Who is your favorite that you've worked with so far over at DallasCowboys.com so far?
100%, and I know the guys will not take this as a dig, but honest to God, it's Kyle Yeoman. And a lot of people don't know this about Kyle. So Kyle and I actually went to college together. We both went to the University of North Texas, and I actually got my broadcasting start with Kyle. We were calling games for the North Texas Athletic Department. The first game I ever did on air was with Kyle. It was a volleyball game. It was actually North Texas versus Oklahoma, which was like a huge game. So it's wild that they let, two college kids call that game. But so I have always had a really good relationship with Kyle. He actually was the one that helped me get this job. It's kind of been something that was in the works for a couple of years. And so to be able to, come back full circle and work with him, and our desks are right next to each other. We actually got a chance to call North Texas volleyball game a couple weeks ago together too. So just a full circle moment. So yeah, I would say Kyle, but only just because of the history. But I will say, I've been doing this for about 5 years now. I have lived everywhere in this country from Montana to Miami. And this is truly the first job where I've just felt, like right at home. Like everybody I work with, I'm so enamored by the way Patrick's brain works, how Nick is able to corral all of our different personalities and somehow get us, to all fit on podcasts and shows. And Derek, the way he allows us the creative freedom to be who we are, but still be professional. I mean, I just think it's a really well-run organization. And I've only been here for 3 months. So, like you said off the top of this, newbie for sure. But yeah, it's been a blast. I love everybody I work with. No complaints.
Very smart that you answered the question, but managed to find
a
way to get everybody involved.
Yes,
everybody got a nice little treat.
Yes,
that was fantastic.
That was great.
Smart, in fact. I noticed that you mentioned that you lived in Montana, Miami, amongst other places. Now,
right.
Miami, that's easy living, I'm sure. But what is the toughest thing about living in Montana?
Y'all, I'm from here. So, period, point blank. It was such a culture shock. I moved up there in June of 2018, and July 4th, 2018, it snowed.
Wow.
And
I'm sorry, you said July?
I did. July of 2018, it snowed.
Yeah, they would have to send a helicopter.
Stick, obviously. Oh, trust me. When we got our first real snow, I was told the real snow didn't come until September, which again is like mind-boggling to me because it's 100 degrees here in September. So it was definitely a culture shock just from the sense of living. It was, it was tough weather-wise. It was tough because I wasn't making a ton of money. The culture, the number one sport in Montana is rodeo. And, we don't really do a lot of that here. And then the next sport is wrestling. So it's like, so it's just having to change your mindset and, learn a lot more. But I loved it because the communities there were so welcoming and so just grateful to have people who were there to tell stories. And that's what I love about this business is telling stories. And so just, I was invited to families' homes on Thanksgiving because I couldn't come home for Thanksgiving. And these families would see me at the grocery store and say, hey, come over to our house for Thanksgiving, or, watching a game at Christmas time with families. So, it was hard. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say I'll ever go back, but I don't ever regret my time being up there. It was such a special moment. And it taught me so much about life. I was up there. It was my first real job. I was by myself, so I had to figure a lot of stuff out on my own. So it made me grow up. And so it definitely, I think, is like a cornerstone of my success so far in this business.
Well, the star has risen quickly for you from snow in July to back home deep in the heart of Texas covering America's team. You can find her on Twitter @ Hailey Sutton, Emmy award-winning host, reporter, and producer for the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, you got to lead off with that. You
exactly,
really can't.
Exactly. Got to put respect on it. Hailey Sutton of DallasCowboys.com, good enough to join us here on the Get Right. Hailey, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Hope to do it again.
Yeah, guys, thank you so much. I enjoyed it.